Hello and welcome back to Grit Serve, coming up on Module 4 here. This is the Greater Resilience Information Toolkit resilience course specifically designed for emergency responders and military, for people in their community to learn how to reach out and support and offer resources for individuals in these populations. I'm Nicole with the Lyda Hill Institute for Human Resilience, and this is in partnership with the Meadows Mental Health, Policy Institute and One Tribe Foundation. Here in Module 4, we're going to do a really brief overview of Module 3, but as a reminder, at any time you can access those videos to get a refresher on what Modules 1 through 3 discussed. We're going to talk a little bit in this module about some cultural awareness as it pertains to disasters, cover a couple of online support platforms that you and your community can tap into, and then we're going to continue our grit steps with grit step number 4, adding to strengths and resilience that we talked about in the last module. A quick overview of module 3, we talked about what does it mean and how do you give support? And a lot of that is simply being there and present for somebody and being willing to listen, offer some support, and actively reflect back what that person is saying and communicating. We also talked about how to ask some good questions, and those being both closed-ended and open-ended questions. Closed-ended questions give that yes, no response or just a short 1 or 2 word answer. Open-ended questions really elicit much more comprehensive discussion, shows the person that you are actively engaged in listening and want to know more about what's going on. We then talked about identifying some coping strengths and resilience within those conversations, and we'll cover more about those today in this module, and kind of what 6 areas of strength to really pinpoint, encourage, talk about, and ask about in these conversations, and then how to add some of those resources. As a reminder too, your workbook is full of resources. Your appendices at the end of your workbook have a variety of resources, tips, skills for each of the 6 areas that we cover, as well as military and emergency response specific resources that you are more than welcome to check out for yourself and share within your community. So I want to take just a few brief moments here and talk about cultural awareness and how it is really important that we gain some cultural competency. That goes beyond just recognizing race and ethnicity. It also encompasses extending some empathy, curiosity, and respect for all the aspects that shape an individual's life. That might include their age, their gender identity, sexual orientation, language, housing status, and value system. And this is not a comprehensive list. There's a lot of other things that can go into somebody's culture and shape the way they perform out in the world, the way they understand their world, and the way they are treated by the world. We wanted to bring this up because a disproportionate burden of disaster mortality tends to occur among racial and ethnic populations and communities that have historical inequities in health. What we mean by this is that when there is a disaster or significant community stress, individuals who are among the minority populations tend to feel a disproportionate burden of that stress. We saw this very strongly with the pandemic, that a lot of disadvantaged communities had a much higher rate of burden, much harder access to resources, a lot more barriers to care when it came to getting treatment or getting help for the pandemic. We see this time and time again in other populations and in other disasters as well. So when your own community is going through a significant stressor or a disaster, it's important to recognize, are there any populations who might be further impacted simply because of their culture or because of their socioeconomic or minority status? If somebody in your community is being disproportionately impacted, it's a great idea to really be more intentional in reaching out and offering some support and resources for those individuals in that community. We also wanted to share some online supportive platforms that, again, you yourself can tap into or you can share with the other people in your community. It's face-to-face support and conversations are always really wonderful and tend to be really effective. However, online support platforms can also be more easily accessed, tend to be a lot more cost-effective and many times free, and can be accessed by a larger number of the population. So this is a really great first step into seeking out some kinds of supportive treatment. This is a great step of doing your own self-care or getting your own self-help going, or simply learning more about what's going on in your own person, in your own body, your own mental health, things like that. So these are a really great kind of first step and a really great way to access some really great help when somebody is disadvantaged or doesn't have the resources. The first one we wanted to share is the My Resilience Help website. This is myresiliencehelp.com. This is an online support web platform that was designed by researchers here at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, in relation with now the Lyda Hill Institute for Human Resilience. This program was designed to help somebody overcome aspects of significant stress in a variety of different modules. So you viewers who sign up for this, users can sign in and create their own profile. They start with creating a map, a self-assessment of what's been going on for them, how are they functioning now, and then they can move through one of these 6 modules, or all of them, of course. So social support, and creating a map of social support and who's in your social support network, self-talk and how we positively talk to ourselves. Relaxation has some really great modules about how to relax and bring down some of that stress response. It goes into unhelpful coping mechanisms as well as triggers and how do we kind of fight through or cope through some of the triggers we might experience in relation to stress that we might feel. And then what I love about myresiliencehelp.com is it has an entire module on how to seek out professional help. So this is a really, really great module to start for yourself if this is something that you've considered of how to seek professional help for yourself, but you're not really sure how to go about it, or you're not really sure what it would be like for you or what questions to ask a therapist. This module walks you through all of that. It's also a really great module to provide to somebody else who might have those questions, or somebody that you think would be helped by some professional mental health services, but you're not really sure how to broach that conversation. You can simply point them to the direction of this website and they can work through it on their own. What's also great about myresiliencehelp.com is it is completely available in Spanish and it is free. Both versions are entirely free. This entire program has been researched and shown to be efficacious or helpful in helping somebody overcome significant stress. So there's been quite a bit of research on it. It's a really great free support. This is an example of what the relaxation module looks like. So it has kind of an introduction to relaxation, kind of gives somebody a taste of what does it feel like to kind of sit back, relax, really become mindful or breathe through some of the stress. And then it has some different audio and video instructions of different relaxation techniques. So how do you kind of work on that diaphragmatic or deep, slow breathing, muscle relaxation. This is one of my favorite go-to ways of relaxing and coping. Muscle relaxation helps you work through relaxing major muscle parts bit by bit. And what's great about it is it shows your body what does it feel like to feel stress, and then what does it feel like to physically, purposefully relax these muscles. So that's a really, really great one. It's a pretty short video. This can be done in 5-10 minutes, which is great for people who, again, we think about our emergency responders, military, who don't necessarily have a lot of time, but need to work on bringing down their stress response. Muscle relaxation is a great way to do that. And then positive imagery is another just wonderful one. It has very calming music tones and very beautiful scenery to reflect on and work on some mindfulness or meditation. My Resilience Help also encourages you to log some of the skills you're learning. So for instance, in the relaxation module, you have a relaxation log so you can start to practice some of these skills. As we've said before, practice works on muscle memory. It makes all of this come a little bit more naturally, a little bit easier to us. Another module I wanted to highlight is the unhelpful ways of coping module. I think this one's really important because we do, as profoundly human beings, sometimes we can get into a tendency of coping with not necessarily the most helpful ways, but instinctually our body wants to do this instead. So the 3 that this module discusses is isolation. So we talked about one of the consequences of significant stress, especially chronic levels of stress, is this desire to isolate or withdraw from their social connections. So this module talks about why does your body do that and what are some ways to fight through some of that emotional isolation. It also talks about excessive anger. So this is sometimes an easier emotion to tap into than some of the other emotions that might be at hand. Anger tends to be a way to release energy. And so it tends to be a coping style for quite a lot of us. And so this module helps us work through those levels of excessive anger. And then it also talks about what do you do if you found yourself kind of self-medicating with alcohol and drugs, and remembering that there are tons of different ways of coping, but it's important to recognize what are some of the automatic coping skills we tend to go to, and asking yourself, is this actually helping me, or is this simply distracting me from what's really going on? So this is a really great module to work through. And then again, probably one of my favorites of this program is the seeking professional help. So as I said, it talks about how do you seek out professional help? Why would you need to potentially? So should you seek it out? Are there certain concerns that are coming up for you? It talks about common treatments for trauma, which is a really great way to just get a little bit of simple education about what is it like to get professional support for trauma specifically. What are some specific modalities? Talks about where you can find a counselor and how to access those resources. And then if and when you do call a counselor, what do you say? What do you ask? What would be helpful? It also has this video here that demonstrates that kind of conversation and how that might go. And it also has a goal sheet. So for somebody who this might feel really intimidating or like a really big goal, this helps break it down into small steps so that you feel more self-efficacious in seeking out some of that professional support. Another platform I wanted to discuss is 211. 211 is a really fantastic resource. It's available across the country and is completely free. You can access it by going to 211.com or simply calling 211. What it does is connects you with an expert in your local area that can provide resources for that area. So that might be economic resources, such as food, shelter. It has crisis resources, resources for domestic situations, even resources for veterans and refugees. So it's a really great comprehensive resource outlet for a lot of these different situations. It is completely free. And like I said, it will connect you with a live person from that area to provide these resources. So again, you can go to 211.com or just simply call 211. Some of the examples here of some of the resources, they do have quite a lot of resources for COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. That includes now vaccine information as well. So if you're looking for where do you get tested or where do you get a vaccine, or what are some resources if you've had some fallout because of the pandemic, this lists a lot of resources. It also talks about crisis and emergency resources in your area, which are fantastic. Disaster assistance and how to apply for some of that disaster assistance. So we've talked a lot about the pandemic, but if your area is going through a flood, for instance, or hurricane or fire season, then this section of the website will also provide what kind of resources specifically are out there for those disasters. It also provides information on how to access essential needs, again, such as food or shelter, some of those other resources available as well. And then they've got some different resource modules for service providers. And then, as I mentioned, veterans, refugees, some of those other populations as well. So 211, really great resource. Why we wanted to highlight this as well is if you're talking to somebody in this supportive grit conversation, and they bring up the fact that they've really been struggling to pay bills, or they don't know if they qualify for certain kind of aid, or they've been having to skip some meals because they can't afford it right now. You can simply point them to 211 or encourage them to call 211 on their own for them to get some of these economic resources. So you don't need to solve the problem for them, right? We've talked about that a couple of times now. You don't need to fix it. But you can provide them or steer them towards these resources to get into individuals who can help them or can help fix the situation. The last platform that I wanted to highlight in this module, although there's so many more wonderful ones out there, is the, of course, our GRIT website, Greater Resilience Information Toolkit website here at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. This is one of the ways to sign up for this program, so you might have already seen this website, but I wanted to share a little bit more about what this website has to offer. So I'm actually going to shift here and share a different screen so that you can see a little bit more specifically what's on this website available. So first, you can access all of our current GRIT programs. We have the GRIT Leadership, which is a GRIT program targeted specifically towards leaders and small business owners. We have GRIT for Ed, which discusses reaching out to individuals in the education community. That can be teachers, that can be students, that can be bus drivers, coaches, and how those individuals can use some support or can support others in their community. And then we also have GRIT Health. This was sponsored by the Colorado Department of Health and discusses how do we support our healthcare workers, healthcare community. And then we have our Simple GRIT community, which is our basic core GRIT training. Somebody can take any or all of these programs. They're all available for free. They're all broken down into these videos and modules and come with their own workbook. Other things that are available on this website, excuse me. So other things available on this website, we have this really great feature of Latrina Ollie. She is one of our current GRIT coaches, and her experience with how she used the GRIT program to support her own family and her own kids. So if you'd like to hear from somebody else in their own words what their experience was like, Latrina has a wonderful story to share. We also have resources here for some other online tools. This includes Silver Cloud, which is an online support platform that coaches can tap into. You can check out more about that by clicking here. It brings you to the Silver Cloud Interactive Support Tool, which is free. We also provide resource lists for different populations, including just general community, emergency management professionals, first responders, mental health providers, and medical providers, our veterans, and youth and family. So within each of these links are a lot of different resources that somebody can tap into or check out for themselves, share with other people in their area. And then we also have some really wonderful video and video casts on trauma. So a couple of them being, if you'd like to hear some stories from individuals who have taken the GRIT training and applied it into their own life, the videos here share their stories. We've got some great just lighten your mood kind of videos available. And then Dr. Charles Benight shares tips on how to build resilience in yourself and other people. And this leads you to our YouTube page that has all of those videos available. 30 Keys to Grit. We've got a couple different subjects available. And we've also got a lot of other programs available on our YouTube page for the Lytle Institute for Human Resilience. So be sure to take some time to check those out if that's something that sounds interesting or helpful for you. Now continuing on to step 4 of GRIT, we've covered steps 1 through 3 in the other modules. Step 1 being how do we simply reach out and intentionally make contact or connection with somebody in your community or in your area. Again, in thinking about GRIT Serve, that might be an emergency responder, whether that's your family member, whether you yourself are an emergency responder, reaching out to coworkers, as well as our military members and in addition. Step 2 is asking good questions. Step 3 is starting to identify the strengths of coping and resilience. And now we're going to talk about how do you then add to those strengths after you have identified what's been going well or what somebody could use a little bit more support in. So first, as a reminder, why are we discussing strengths? Why is this so important? A couple of reasons. One, because when we get together, we tend to get into this negativity spiral of really talking about all the stresses in our life. And that tends to, it can feel validating, but it also tends to sink us a little bit. And we start to feel kind of negative because of the stress that we're all discussing. So instead, when we help people focus and identify those strengths and resilience, we help promote them a sense of control, safety, hope, and self-efficacy. And if you remember back to module 1, these are some of the core principles of psychological first aid, which means these are things that we know and have been shown to help somebody recover from stress or disaster. In our conversations, our goal here is to simply listen, support, and encourage these resilient behaviors. It's really important to recognize those behaviors because we as humans don't always recognize that in ourselves. So it can be really helpful and powerful for somebody else to point that out for us. So as the person is speaking about their concerns and about some of the stress they're experiencing, you can look for those opportunities to encourage these behaviors. And as a reminder, these strengths are social connections and support. So how social is this person? And that might be social with their own family and getting some quality, important time with family. That might be getting out with friends or connecting with friends virtually if that's the safer option at that time. It could be getting in with support groups or therapy even, but how social is that person being? We're all social creatures, as much as we like it or not. We as humans are social creatures. So we will do better when we have some level of social connection in our life. It's just up to us how much social connection feels good for us, right? The second would be positive mood improving activities. So what is bringing joy? What's making somebody smile? What's getting them through that day and or improving their mood throughout the day? And there are tons and tons of, coping skills or activities that somebody could engage in that could boost mood. So it's helpful to pinpoint those as well. 3 would be calming and relaxing. So as a reminder, when we have a stress response from a stressor in our environment, whether real in front of us or imagined, we have a stress response that activates the sympathetic nervous system in our body that prepares our body to fight, flight, or freeze in response to that stressor. It heightens our awareness, heightens our senses. When we purposefully or intentionally calm and relax our body, it engages the parasympathetic nervous system, and that cues our body to rest and digest. It says the stress is over, the danger is gone, we can now come down from this. So when we intentionally and purposefully calm and relax our body, we can hack that system a little bit and encourage that in our body. So calming and relaxing activities could be things like yoga, going for walks, being mindful, doing some meditation, anything that again brings down the stress response. Next is healthy eating and drinking. So as a reminder, brain and body are very connected. We don't always take that into consideration. So it's important that we think about what's going in our body, especially on those days that feel more stressful. If we have found ourselves feeling really sluggish, really down, really negative, think about what have we put in our bodies today? And the opposite, right? If we haven't been eating very well for a couple of days, how has it impacted our mood? And then remembering to drink water, limit caffeine, do some of those other healthy habits. Sleep is another really important resilient behavior because usually across the board, when we are feeling some stress, our sleep tends to go out the window as well. And we really, really do thrive better when we've had quality amount of sleep. And we're not here to discuss how much sleep we need or what that has to look like. It's simply, are you getting quality sleep? And then finally, exercise, which can simply be, are you moving your body throughout the day? And if yes, then is there another goal for exercise you have in mind? Or is there a way for you to burn off some of the extra stress after work or prepare your body before work with some really good, helpful exercise? So how do you introduce that topic when you are deciding, I'd really like to go into these different kinds of strength? You can simply say, I'd like to quickly check in on some key actions that help people get through this stressful time. You can always bring in previous discussions of strength. If you've heard somebody say that they've really been connecting with friends lately, we want to encourage that kind of behavior, highlight that it's been really important and helpful for them, and encourage different kinds of steps in that strength. Or if you notice something that somebody is not doing as well, helping them show some resources or support in that activity. For each of these 6 areas of strength, by the way, there is an appendix in your workbook at the end that provides tips and skills or tricks for all 6 of these areas. So don't feel like it's on you to figure out, well, how do I support somebody who maybe, could use some healthier food ideas, right? You can simply provide them the appendix, or you can talk about some of the things that are on the appendix to share some of those resources with them. You can also very specifically ask questions to open up dialogue about any of these 6 areas as well. We do not need to move through the conversation like we're checking these off a checklist. It's important that this conversation feels very natural and supportive. So simply think about what kind of strengths have been brought up in the conversation already. And if they haven't mentioned a lot, or if you'd really like to ask about other ones, here are some specific questions you can use. So first, what are you doing each week to stay connected with friends or family, to give and get support from other people? So as a reminder, it's important to get support. It's also important to give support to others. So you can ask intentionally, how is that going for you? What are you doing to stay connected? What are you doing each week to include positive activities or activities that you enjoy that make you feel better inside yourself? So what lifts your mood right now? What's bringing you joy? That's the question my boss usually asks me, is what's bringing you joy this week? And I love that question because we just don't often think about it. And when we take the time to think about it, we really remember these wonderful things in our life that do bring a smile to our face. What are you doing to keep your mind and body calm and relaxed? And again, variety of things somebody might be engaging in. What are you doing to help your sleep, especially if you've noticed that they aren't getting a lot of sleep or that this is something that they've been struggling with? Or if they've been doing better about it, asking, well, did something change? Did you do something to make that better? Are you getting enough physical exercise each week? We certainly don't want to pressure somebody into doing more exercise than they can or that they're able to. The question is simply, how often are you moving your body? And what are you doing to make sure you're eating well, limiting your use of substances? So what are you putting in your body? Does that change when you're feeling stressed? Does it make you feel better when it's healthier food and healthier drinks in your body? How does that look like for you each week? So some specific questions you can ask. Of course, put this in your own language, your own words. That's why it is so important to practice these skills. And you'll see a role play, of course, that demonstrates what some of these questions can sound like in a very natural, easy conversation. So first, I want to pause for a self-reflection here because it's really important that we walk the walk, right? We talk the talk, we walk the walk. So how are you encouraging these resilient behaviors in yourself? And are there areas you want to focus more on? Especially as an emergency responder and military, if you're wanting to kind of lead by example, or you're hoping that your crew or your unit will also be healthier and more reflected on self-care, it's important that you show that for yourself as well. So if you were asking your crew, what are you doing to take care of yourself? You should be asking that same question for yourself first, right? Or at least at the same time. So if you think about resilient behaviors, especially in times of stress, because those behaviors might change or might not be as easy to access when we are feeling stressed. So I mentioned, for instance, that one of my go-to coping mechanisms is I walk my dog. Well, that's not the easiest thing in the winter. And I recently was pregnant, and so it wasn't the easiest thing pregnant either. So my coping skill had to change, right? I didn't have walking my dogs every day as accessible to me as it what used to be. And so I had to change that up a little bit. And for me, that changed to doing yoga nightly so that I still got some form of exercise that was very calming for me, but that I could do from the comfort of my home. There are other things that I wanted to focus on that I've had to kind of take that time to reflect on. For instance, my water intake. I work from home and my water intake tends to be terrible. So I have to remind myself to drink water every couple of hours, right? So sometimes we even set ourselves reminders to do things like that to actually take care of ourselves. So reflect on that yourself. When you think about those 6 key areas of strength, again, those are social connections, calming behaviors, mood boosting activities, healthy eating and drinking, exercise, and sleep. Are there behaviors that you're doing very well with? Are there behaviors that you want to focus more on? So pause here, or after this module today, fill out the self-reflections here, because it's important that we consider how these skills are going for us as we move through these conversations with others. So now we're going to continue the role play between law enforcement officer Clint and myself. You've seen us move through steps 1, 2, and 3. You're going to see steps 1 through 3 again, in addition to step 4, where I start to add to the strengths that we've identified that he's doing well with or could use some more support on. Hey, Clint, it's Nicole. How's it going?
Good. How about yourself?
Good, good. I've just I was sitting here thinking about some of the stress that kind of our frontline workers are going through right now, and of course, that made me think of you and how you and your crew are doing lately with all of this crazy pandemic stress. We're still in the thick of it, as much as I hate to say that. So I just wanted to see if you have some time to just check in. I wanted to see how things are going for you. Is this a good time?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I got a little bit of time.
Cool. Well, exactly that. How are things going for you? Like really going for you?
Oh, I mean, things are going a little stressful, but it's definitely going.
Yeah. Tell me what's going on with the stress. Like when you say stressful, I can use my imagination. I can guess what you guys are going through, but what are you going through?
Well, I mean, increased overtime, people getting sick. They switched our schedule from an 8-hour shifts to 12-hour shifts and then back to 8-hour shifts. And, it's just the constant unknown of what you're walking into each day is kind of just, it's getting pretty raw. And, the masks, obviously they're there for a reason, but the masks are hard to communicate through.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine. You mentioned the unknown, and it's such a different kind of unknown right now too, right? Like you guys are prepared for the level of unknown when you respond to certain situations, but this is different because this is like everywhere, everyone being impacted by that. And I can imagine that's pretty stressful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then you mentioned the masks. I feel very lucky to work from home and not have to wear masks at all times. I can't imagine doing 8-12 hours with a mask on. How's that been?
That's challenging to have to wear a mask for that long because it heats up inside and, you start sweating and things like that. It's a challenge.
Yeah. And it's just so much harder to communicate, right? Because you have to focus so much on the rest of your face and body language because you can't show obviously what your mouth is doing that
absolutely. You definitely have to use
communication harder, I bet.
Yeah, you have to use your words more.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, which I imagine isn't the easiest thing in some of those situations you're going to.
No, not really.
Yeah. Well, man, what are you doing to get through some of that stress? I mean, that's like everyday stress, huh?
Well, yeah, I try coming home and taking a shower, exercising, or when I have the time to, or if I just need to come home and go straight to bed because I have to wake up in a few hours to go back to work. I've been turning my TV off and listening to audiobooks instead.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I imagine that's been helpful because it stops all that kind of artificial light coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I never realized how much that the light from the TV will actually keep me awake, and the audiobooks, just that kind of like monotone speaking, it really kind of helps put me out a lot faster and keep me asleep.
That's awesome. I know when I feel stressed, and most of the people I talk to when they feel stressed, like sleep's the first thing to go out the window.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's good that you've kind of kept that a priority, knowing that your body needs it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And you mentioned exercise too. You're still getting some exercise in, even with those long shifts?
Yeah, I try to. When you're working more than what you're supposed to, going from 8 to 12 to 16 hours, you have shorter windows to sleep or have family time. But I try to get something in, at least the very least, if it's just 10 minutes. I try to get something in. But then there's always some of those days are. That also depends on like what I ate the day before too, because that's my eating habits on those longer shifts sometimes aren't the best.
Oh no, has that kind of gone out the window a little?
A little bit, yeah. I plan really well for my 8-hour shifts. Water and good food and good snacks. But then when the shift becomes extended, sometimes they extend the shift at the very last minute too. I'm supposed to get off at midnight and they call me at 11:30 and say, hey, guess what? You're staying for an hour or another 8 hours on you. Sometimes it's just quick options. I got to run down to the gas station and grab a sandwich or unfortunately, the closest thing is a Carl's Jr. So stop in there and get a burger.
Yeah, that kind of, I imagine wreaks havoc when you're used to eating pretty healthy, but you're also, getting what's available to you at midnight.
Yeah.
You don't have a whole lot of options, as you
Yeah,
said.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, one thing that I've heard some officers do is they get those kind of meal delivery kits and stuff where you don't have to cook a whole lot or it's already like pre-ready. You just have to heat it up or mix it up or whatever. Have you
Yeah.
tried any of those things?
I have not. Probably could do better about that though. Getting maybe quicker, healthier options that last in my bag for longer. Even when I go to, if I have to go to Carl's Jr., getting a grilled chicken sandwich instead of a burger.
Yeah, we always got to remember that those options are technically there, right?
Absolutely.
Well, hey, I've got a coupon for one of those meal kits. I'll send it to you. You can try it out and see if that maybe, like you said, having some things stashed in your bag might help.
Yeah, that'd be great. Be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then you said caffeine too. Has that been pretty tricky, especially on those extra 8?
Yeah. So, and yeah, to keep functioning, all night long. Unfortunately, caffeine is something that helps keep me awake during that time. Yeah.
Yeah, that tricky stimulant there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you using for caffeine? Is it just like buttloads of coffee or Red Bulls? I mean, what are you doing?
Kind of whatever's available. I've been
Yeah.
getting these little Miho, the artificial flavor for your water, but it's got
Oh,
caffeine in it too.
there you go.
Yeah, those tend to work pretty well.
Well, at least then you're kind of getting water too. I know that
Yeah.
it sounds silly because, like I said, I'm rooted at my desk. I'm at home, so it sounds silly, but my water intake has been terrible lately with
Yeah.
everything changing. And so I have an app on my phone that every like 2 or 3 hours it reminds me like, hey, you should be 16 ounces of water down by now.
Right.
And it actually has really helped. Have you tried
Really?
something like that?
No, I haven't tried something like that, but that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. Like I said, it's silly, like it should not be that hard, but I have found myself going 5, 6 hours without any water. And I can't imagine, you're constantly on the move, having to remind yourself to stop and drink water might be kind of helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, I'm happy to send that stuff to you. I was also wondering, I know family is so important to you. Have you been able to get any of that quality time with all of this inconsistent shifting?
So yeah, on my weekends, I tend to get more than I do during the weekdays. With the extended shifts, it's kind of I've got to come home and sleep as long as I can. Because I go from 16 to I have 8 hours off between the end of my 16-hour shift and the next 8-hour shift, and I got to try to sleep in there somehow. So it's kind of come home, hi, got to go to bed. But on the weekends, yeah, we really try to make the most of our time together. Instead of sitting around watching TV, sitting next to each other but not talking, we try to go for walks together. We sit at the table, we eat dinner together, we talk. We really try to interact with each other as much as we can during our weekends.
Oh, and that's so important. I think we all just tend to get lost in our days, and we forget to take the time to just sit and talk and actually connect with each other. And that's so important when you're family.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking, I know you've got the little one. I was thinking I've seen some like zoos and aquariums and stuff that are doing virtual tours. I thought that would be such a fun thing to do. I know we were trying to like reduce electronics, but this is a little different, right? But putting like the zoo on the TV and getting to like virtually
Right.
through the zoo and kind of talk about the animals and talk about the fish. And I just think that's such a fun thing that a lot of the zoos are doing lately.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually.
Yeah, well, I'll send you the link to the one I heard about.
Yeah,
It'd be kind
thank
of
you.
fun to do at the little.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. All right, so quick little demonstration there as you see us move through all 4 of those steps. Hopefully that conversation sounds pretty natural, sounds like a conversation we really would be having, but you can see me add some resources there at the end, meal delivery kit, coupon, an app for drinking water, some resources or some links to, access virtual zoos, aquariums, some of those skills as well. So we wanted to show how does it feel or what does it look like to pinpoint some of those areas that are both going really well, right? He's doing really well sleeping, he's doing pretty well exercising, as well as these areas that he can maybe do a little bit more with, or maybe feel a little bit more efficacious in, and providing those resources. In the last module, you'll see me kind of wrap up that conversation, summarize, check in again later. But we just wanted to kind of move through those first 4 steps with you. So this is the end of module 4. I encourage you to take some time to self-reflect some of the main takeaways from this module. What sounded really good for you? What would you like to practice? Anything that's kind of still sticking in your mind? And we will see you back here for our last module 5 and wrap up the Grit Serve program. See you then.